2009年8月7号深夜登陆花莲的莫拉克台风，在8天超级风阵再度撼动全台，地点就在东台湾的花莲。
Due to global warming and climate change, the scale and damage of massive compound disasters have increased, posing a serious threat to our safety and property. In the face of severe challenges in harsh environments, to protect our homes and ensure our safety during disasters, we need a fully functional emergency response organization, that is, the Central Emergency Operations Center. To effectively respond to disasters, our country's existing disaster prevention and response organizations are divided into three hierarchies for operations: the central government, county, city governments, and township, town, city, and district offices. Each department has dedicated personnel responsible for disaster prevention and response and stationed in the Central Emergency Operations Center during disasters to coordinate the emergency response efforts. To strengthen the response efficiency, the center, directed by the Office of Disaster Management, ODM, maintains a 24-hour watch mode in conjunction with the National Rescue Command Center, the MOHW National Aeromedical Approval Center, and the National Fire Agency, Ministry of the Interior, to jointly respond to the disasters. According to the type of disaster that happens, the minister of the corresponding department will serve as the commander of the center. The relevant minister and deputy minister should be the coordinating commanders and the deputy commanders, to station in turns 24 hours a day. Commander who fully manages and supervises the preparedness, response, and efforts of the Central Emergency Operations Center. There will be 4 groups when the center is activated, including staff, information, operations, and administration, also the forward command post. Underneath them are 20 functional groups that handle various disaster response issues and integration by sharing screens and whiteboards. Moreover, to ensure the ability of the continuity of massive disasters, we set up the Northern Emergency Backup Center in New Taipei City, the Central Emergency Backup Center in Nantou, and the Southern Emergency Backup Center in Kaohsiung to enhance the capability of national emergency response. When a disaster occurs and meets the requirements of activating the Central Emergency Operations Center, the Disasters Regulating Authority will immediately notify the relevant department's dedicated personnel to station within 1 hour by instant messages, text messages, and faxes. The staff who are on duty should begin to collect the disaster data and initiate dispatching resources through the EMIC system and on-site resonance. The disaster situation and the response efforts will be posted on the websites of the National Fire Agency, Ministry of the Interior, and the Central Emergency Operations Center, Facebook, Twitter, and so on. When a catastrophe occurs, we even use the message service platform by designated TV channel switching, radio, digital display, notifying the emergency messages to the public via videos, graphics, texts, and voice messages as well. The Central Weather Bureau, the Directorate General of Highways, the Water Resources Agency MOEA, the Soil and Water Conservation Bureau COA, the National Science and Technology Center for Disaster Reduction, etc., will release the public warning message via CBS or instant messengers depending on the situation, and also announce the relevant disaster information on your website for the public to know the latest news easily, enhancing a dual communication with the public. The center will also appeal to the public not to enter the warning zones set by the local governments through the media, to prohibit mountain climbing, and to promote the use of the National Fire Agency 1991 Safety Bulletin Board. Also, the center spontaneously provides information about all kinds of disaster situation and information analysis to governments at all levels, and earnestly implements the strategy of the preventive evacuation, ensuring the lowest reduction of life and property losses. In order to understand the disaster situation accurately and exert the effectiveness of disaster relief, when the Central Emergency Operations Center is activated, all levels of government will immediately mobilize diverse channels such as police, civil affairs departments, and fire systems, non-governmental organizations, flood control volunteers, and debris flow disaster prevention volunteers by using phones, police telephones, mobiles, wireless radio, satellite phones, microwave radio systems, EMIC system, and social media to investigate and report disasters. Also, helicopters will be dispatched to take aerial photos of the disaster area if necessary. Realizing the situation of the disaster, the center continues to hold a meeting of information assessment and work reports, assistance or GIS systems. The meeting uses disaster potential data and spatial map data to conduct analysis and judgment, and proposes early warning response suggestions such as disaster potential, areas prone to be isolated, early warning closures of roads, and other warning information, and prevention evacuation recommendations, etc. Providing the local governments as a reference for emergency response, the Ministry of Economic Affairs will pre-deploy the pumps and cooperate with local governments to deploy equipment and manpower in advance for areas prone to be isolated and disaster-prone roads. To provide the public with immediate access to important information, the Central Emergency Operations Center will hold press conferences to explain the important disaster situation after the work reports. Also, for the hearing impaired, a sign language interpreter will translate simultaneously in the typhoon or earthquake live press conference to share the first-hand disaster response and important safety information. The YouTube live links will also be posted on its website to meet different people's needs to obtain real-time disaster information. If the disaster situation has not been resolved, the center should keep operating with the principle of active support from the central government and active implementation by local governments. However, when the disaster exceeds the capability of the local government, except for the mutual support agreements initiation between the local governments, the central government plays a role of resource dispatching, such as helicopters, equipment, and manpower, to maximize the use of limited resources. When a massive disaster occurs and requires international support, the commander should get approval from the chairman of the Central Disaster Prevention and Protection Council to activate the International Rescue Team reception and departure center at the airport, to assist the rescue teams speeding up the entry procedures and shuttle them to the disaster areas to save lives. Besides, to effectively assist the local governments in disaster rescue, the center has to send personnel to local emergency operations center when needed. When the disaster situation expands, it will also set up a forward command post in time, so that the central and local governments can maintain closer cooperations and mobilize the resources correspondingly. When the disaster situation is generally under control, the local governments will continue to make use of the major disaster supplies and volunteer integration platform to effectively match the government departments and private sectors to assist and resettle victims after the disaster. And they will also start up the social assistance mechanism to aid affected people. The governments will carry out follow-up tasks such as reopen the roads and repairing the water and power pipelines to let people return to normal life as soon as possible, and keep on monitoring and verifying the disaster situation. When the emergency response missions are completed, the Central Emergency Operations Center will officially be deactivated and switch to normal operations mode. Every post-disaster recovery and reconstruction will be continuously followed up by the relevant government agency according to their authority. Central Emergency Operations Center is a strong fortress in the hearts of the people. Take actions when nipping in the bud of disaster. Synchronize with the local government and give a mercy hand when the disasters occurs. Help our people to get rid of the bondage of disaster, be the shelter of all the people in this country. In the future, the central and local governments will continue to uphold a cautious and conscientious attitude, building a close disaster protection network for Taiwan together. Let's protect Taiwan hand in hand and sail to a safe future.